Dave Hallett is the Senior Director of Supply Chain and Customer Collaboration at PepsiCo South Africa. He is joined by Nomkhosi Ncube, Supply Chain Customer Collaboration Manager, and Silindile Manyoni, the Senior Customer Collaboration Manager. Please welcome them all to SAPICS 2023.
Perfect, ladies. Good morning. It's really a privilege for us to be here this morning and to be able to present to you and to share something of our journey of customer collaboration. If you were in the session next door with Wesley and you were listening to what's possible with SAP or with some of the amazing technologies, this is going to be a very different session to that. Some people will be relieved, some people will be like, oh, boring. So it depends if you're that way inclined. But the good news is that I think everybody can probably learn something from this, but we can also learn a huge amount. So we're also very interested in chatting to you afterwards and feeding back, because we're very much on a journey of learning how to collaborate with our customers in PepsiCo. Just in terms of introducing my colleagues, it's lovely to have Silindile and Nomkhosi on the stage with me. We're quite a new team, and in PepsiCo, we're really trying to look at how do we differentiate in the way that we collaborate with our customers. And when I talk about customer collaboration today, it's a little bit broader than the definition of pure forecasting collaboration, planning collaboration, that type of thing. This is really looking at collaborating right across the supply chain, in all aspects of the supply chain. And that really for us starts at a senior level, sitting around a table at top-to-top meetings and talking about joint business planning. What are we going to be doing together as businesses in the next year, in the next 2 years, in the next 3 years? And then from that, we develop our plans. And we're going to share a little bit about that journey and how do you differentiate in a way which enables or makes use of your capabilities and at the same time looks to meet the needs of what your customer is specifically looking for. In terms of talking through the morning or the time with you this morning, we're going to give you a little bit of context to the PepsiCo world, not because we want you to know about PepsiCo, but because it's interesting to understand our environment a little bit, and maybe there's some things that you can relate to. And certainly the complexity of the world that we live in today is very interesting. Also, we'll talk a little bit about the context, and a lot of the things have been shared and spoken about today, but we're going to give you some insights into how it affects companies on the ground, and maybe you have similar things or slightly different things. We'll talk a little bit about the journey and the challenges with differentiation specifically. What does that mean and how does that work? Then we're going to hand over to Silindile. She's going to talk and help you understand a little bit what it means to really listen to your customer. Now, there's something called active listening. If you're still early on in your development of that, work on it with your wife or your husband first, and then once you got that right, you can move on to your customers. But it's really about really listening very carefully to what they're saying, what is important to them. And then we're going to share a concept that sort of we've developed around a customer catalog, and what does that mean, and how can you use that to really bring this idea of differentiation to life. And then we'll hand over to Nomkhosi, and she'll give us a bit of a view of the power and the importance of communication in this whole area of collaboration. And we'll finish this morning with a little bit of a case study, and then some possible next steps and thinking. So firstly, our context. PepsiCo as our name, probably everybody thinks about Pepsi, but we really got a huge number of different products that we make in our business. All food products, food and beverage products. And they span a massive network of manufacturing sites, over 48 factories and 13 bakeries and multiple depots and DCs around the country. What's interesting about the products that we make is we've got a huge variety, from products which are bulk, which we just look at putting on and interlink and just getting it there as cheaply as possible. Other products that, like bread, that we deliver on a daily basis. Other products that are direct to store, others that go through DCs, multiple different modes of getting to the customer. And so when we start to talk about customer collaboration and differentiation, we've got a very interesting world in which we operate. When we talk about the segmentation of our customers in our different business units, a large portion of our customers sit in the modern trade section, which would be defined for those who are not familiar with FMCG. Those would be the big retailers. Then there's also a wholesale element, traditional trade, which is more the lower LSM and into the spaza shops, forecourts, which would be the garages, and then away from home, which is hotels, restaurants, and those type of things. So huge spread of products distributed to customers in multiple different ways across the country and to multiple different types of customers who've got very specific needs and very specific business models that they're pushing. As PepsiCo, we're undergoing a lot of change at the moment. A lot of change to systems, a lot of change to our network in terms of how we're optimizing. And so those become really important strategic discussion points when we're talking to our customers to understand what they're doing and to start thinking about how do we make these two big systems work together. If we look at the environment that we're in, all of us are experiencing these things. We spoke a little bit about raw materials not arriving for whatever reason. Sadly, in South Africa and around the world, we're seeing lots of companies going to business rescue. Times are difficult. And so supplier reliability is a big challenge, and it's a challenge for many of you as well. In terms of Eskom, load shedding is great. I haven't actually seen somebody put load shedding schedule into a forecast yet and build it into one of these models. So that would be an interesting one. But it has an enormous effect on our business, and we're having to invest hundreds of millions of rand into putting in generation into our plants and factories. We've still got some after effects of COVID. COVID had an enormous impact on so many different areas. If you were a beer lover, by the way, we don't make beer, but if you were a beer lover, over that COVID period, you would have suffered terribly unless you had your own little still going somewhere or distillery. But the reality is we were very dependent on spent yeast to make Marmite and Bovril. And so you would have seen during COVID, that was something that was very difficult to get your hands on. What happened during that time as well is customers started to increase their inventory levels. And as they did that as a buffer to all these different knocks, what they started to do is put pressure back onto the suppliers to say, we want the fresher stock, because now we want fresh stock to be able to keep it for longer periods of time. And that started a whole chain of events in our business that had quite a big knock-on on the way that we think and operate, and became a key collaboration discussion. In terms of wheat, that's a major input into many of our products, and so we had a very big hit from the Ukraine crisis that continues to this day. Some of you might be joining the Weet-Bix factory tour tomorrow, and it's a really interesting one if you've signed up for that. What's happening is food inflation is massive around the world. It's at peak levels all around the world. And for our South African context, this is terrible. People are already suffering high levels of poverty. And so food security is a massive concern for us as a country and certainly as a business. How do we continue to supply the nation with really important products, not just Doritos, but really important products that feed people on a daily basis? And how do we do that in a cost-effective way? And so that's the context for collaboration as we move into this next world. What is one of the big impacts of that is the push from retailers to promote. So massive deals and promotions. Many of you, even though you're earning reasonable salaries, will be buying a lot of your products when you see them on promotion. We have retailers going from 80 to 90% of their basket on permanent promotion or running promotions from one thing to the next. And that puts massive strain on planning because, of course, it's not just your promotions that you're worried about, it's all your competitors. So people switch very quickly depending on who's promoting when. I know there's some interesting fancy tools around that can help with that. So we really believe customer collaboration gives companies a competitive advantage. We think it's really important probably for two major things, but there's another aspect which is also really critical. The two major ones for us is how do we ensure supply of our products, service levels to our customers through collaboration. And the second one was something that Wesley also mentioned, which is this concept of joint value creation. Working together to look at how you can optimize your networks and your route to market to be able to do it in the most cost-effective way. Of course, the third one, which is really, really important, is the whole concept around environmental sustainability. And that's one of the areas that you have to collaborate with customers, and it's something that we're very passionate about at PepsiCo. So a little bit about navigating the journey and the challenges. You know, it would be very easy for us to say, one size fits all. Guys, this is how it is. Take it or leave it. That's how we work. But what that does is it really limits the ability to collaborate. It limits the ability to optimize what you're doing. And what I'm saying here is not easy. This is not an easy journey. It's not the easy route to collaborate. When we talk about collaboration, we talk about collaboration within our own business to break down silos, and then we talk about understanding and working with the customer to really optimize what they're doing in collaboration with them. But collaboration has to be fair. So how do you differentiate and be fair? We're going to try and explore some of that today. So the idea with this, with differentiation, is not to exclude people from opportunities, but rather to look at what are companies wanting to do, what is their key focus area, what are our capabilities, and how do we match those? So how do you give companies the opportunity to drive what they need to in conjunction with what you're able to do? And Silindile will explore that concept a little bit later. It's also really important to have a real strategic intent around this and clarity and investment around it. Now, not everyone's able to pour huge amounts of money in it. It's really about what you're thinking about, how you're approaching it, what is your mindset. And then somebody in one of the sessions yesterday said, if you haven't got a program, you're not focusing on it. And what is that about? A program is saying we're actually structurally taking some of these ideas and putting them onto paper and having some action plans around them. So you might not have a huge amount of resource, but have you got an action plan on how you're thinking? What is your strategy on how you're going to collaborate? I'm almost out of time for mine, or I'm probably out of time for mine, but I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this quickly, which is looking at the roadmap. Now, Wesley had the concept of on-switch, off-switch, which I love for systems, because you can do that, right? Switches on or it switches off. When it comes to people, they're a little bit different. And we take a little bit of time to learn, to grow, to build. And so what we've got is a maturity assessment, which says, okay, where are we? We're in a very reactive state. Where do we want to get to? We want to get to capable in terms of our own thinking around this. And there's actually two more steps, which take us to world-class. We don't need to be world-class collaborators right now, but we certainly need to be capable. And what does that mean? So what we've looked at is within our people and organization, what skills do we need? What do we need to build in order to be able to deliver that? In terms of processes, what are the critical processes in facing our customers, talking with our customers, doing backhauls, all of those type of things? How do we document those and make those muscles that are really strong so then when customers come to us, we're able to activate those particular things? A critical one is technology, but it's an enabler, not something that drives the whole process. So once we're clear on what we want to do, what are the tools and technologies, and by the way, there's so many opportunities around this space. At the moment, we're busy with a big SAP implementation. And then what are the metrics and performance measures? And this is a minefield when you get into discussions with customers, because everybody measures things that we consider, oh, this is very clear, this is the metric and this is how it's measured. They measure them in different ways. And when you get to customer collaboration, one of the critical things is really understanding what your customer's measuring and why. Because it's very easy to just throw up numbers that show that you're so great, but actually they may be seeing something completely different.
Yeah.
And understanding what that is vital. So I'm going to hand over now to Silindile. She's going to take us through this next bit.
Thank you, Dave. So I guess the starting point has to be how well do you really understand your customer? And more so, what is important to them? I think Dave touched on it a bit now, asking how you measure yourself. Are you measuring yourself on the things that are important to your customers? So I think that's a big one. And as you can see there's a pawn and a king. And most often, we're thinking we're kings, but we're actually pawns. Sometimes you're thinking you're a lion, but meanwhile you're a cat. So Charles Darwin said that it's not the strongest of species that survive, nor is it the most intelligent of species that survive, but the species that survive are the ones that are most adaptable to change in the environment in which they find themselves in. So fundamentally, you need to start asking yourself, do you understand your customer? And moreover, does your customer see you as a supplier, or do they see you as a partner? When we look at our environment that we play in, which is retail and FMCG, what we're discovering that's fundamentally changed is that, yes, it's about order execution. And that's about getting the right product at the right place, at the right time, in the right quantity, and the right quality. And that will always be the supply chain fundamentals and what we do and the heart of our business. But it's no longer enough. It's not making us be the supplier of choice. It's not giving us competitive advantage. And what has shifted in the retail environment is that order execution is more transactional, and you get that right grade, but it's not going to make you the supplier of choice. What we're seeing is more around joint value creation. It's more around shared value. It's more around, are you an enabler to my strategy? And that's the space that you actually want to play in. So you got to shift the relationship from a supplier to a partnership. And I guess the two big things that we're seeing that suppliers are doing very well and that have shifted in that is the first one. You got to be intentional about getting feedback. And I guess is how do you start getting feedback? And it's simple, just ask. Like, keep asking, ask some more, and continue asking. And once you've asked, you got to then shift it to be the way of doing business. You got to make it into your culture. You got to make it into your ethos. You got to make it into your DNA. And I think we've done it very well at PepsiCo in the sense that it is part of our behaviors. And so what we do, we've got a pillar that asks about customer centricity. It asks about consumer centricity. So when you're in a meeting, our language has changed. It's like the decision that you made, was it consumer-centric? Was it customer-centric? And you got to understand that when you're sitting at the table, whatever you're doing or the actions that you take, need to answer that. Is that whatever am I doing, is it speaking to my customer or is it speaking to my consumer? And so if it's a language, it's a behavior that you embody and you've embedded in the culture of your organization. So if it's not there, firstly ask. Once you've asked, shift from asking and move to it being part of your culture and the way you do business. So that's very important. And then once you've asked, you've obviously now got data, and you've got a lot of data and a lot of touch points in the organization. And then you're going to need to synthesize the data to meaningful action items. So there'll be a lot of stuff that's coming out of the data, but you've got to pick your win battles, and these are the ones that you want to pick to say, I want to achieve 5 of these. In the next year, these are the 5 I'm going to focus on. And those are the ones that you concentrate on, and those are the ones that you have to achieve. So you've got to make it into action items and make them into your must-win battles. So what we found in our organization, they usually sit on 4 aspects. It's either they're challenging us on our systems, they're challenging us on our processes, or they're challenging us on our culture, our leadership, and our resources. So sorry, there's 5, not 4. So there's 5 of those that speak to us. And then another thing, once you've internally figured out feedback sessions and et cetera, you also want to see how you fare in terms of your competitors. And so we participate in a survey in the FMCG environment, and the survey ranks out on a number of metrics, as you can see there. And yes, guys, order execution is there. They do still measure us on order execution. We've got on time in full. We've got supply efficiencies. We've got customer service. So that's there. It's standard. It will always be standard. But you'll see there's a lot of things that are new that are popping out. So for example, we've got, do you support my strategy? As my supplier, are you an enabler to my strategy? It's got nothing to do with order execution. It's around how have you aligned yourself as a supplier into a partnership relationship to support their strategy. Another one is appropriate investment, and I think Dave touched on it. So our customers are putting so much money into fuel, into generators. When you go to a store, it's very seldom that you get to a store, a big retailer, where if there's load shedding, it's off. They've got generators. I mean, they've published how much money they're spending on fuel. And so you can no longer say to a customer, sorry, I didn't produce because I had load shedding. They're challenging us on where are you guys using your money? Where are you guys investing? And I think that's where the conversations are heading at. The other thing that they are challenging us on is ESG. They're saying, are you guys an ethical company? What are you doing about sustainability? What are you doing about environment? That's got nothing to do with order execution. But they are challenging us on fundamentally how do you run your business and what do you do in your business. So that's a big shift for us that's happened. The other one is the ease of doing business. Is it easy for us to do business with you? Are you investing in technology? What are you doing to make our lives easier? Are you investing in innovation? Are you challenging the status quo? So that's the things that we're seeing in the surveys that we partake in. So simply put, service is just no longer enough. The second one that they've managed to do well is they have matched customer needs with their own strategy and with their own capabilities. While they do this, they offer a collaboration catalog. So what this catalog actually speaks about, it's what are my capabilities as an organization? So what can I do well? What capability muscles have I fostered in the organization? And what do I want to sustain in my organization? So you'll see that we've got focus area for 2023. These are capabilities that you don't have, and you want to acquire, and you want to build, and you want to get resources or investment, etc., to get it. Then there's also capabilities that you've got, and you want to sustain. They are important to you. Then you've got not a focus, but these are ones that will be a focus later. So it's almost like a visionary board of where am I at the current moment, where do I want to be, and what do I want to focus on? And I think the importance of this is that then this needs to link up with your customer strategy. So it's not about putting stuff on the board that are not strategically aligned with what you want to achieve. It's firstly about your strategy as an organization and how your strategy links up with that of the customer. So unfortunately, you can't do everything for the customer, but you have the conversation to say, Mr. Customer, these are my capabilities that can speak to these priorities within your business. And that's the important shift in the link between your capabilities and that of the customer. I guess I've got a puzzle piece there, and the puzzle piece is about you as the supplier and your customer. And when you're building a puzzle, nobody's sabotaging anybody unless it's kids. But adults usually want to build a puzzle and get the picture. And it's about how do we jointly move the pieces together to get to where we want to be. And I think the other big thing is around, and what we're seeing in the space that we're playing is around maturity of some organizations. So you could have great capabilities, but some companies are not at the mature level to have the collaboration conversation, to have the joint value creation conversation, to have the mutual benefit. And also, there's a lot of money investment that goes in here. So companies also need to speak about, do we have money to engage in some of these conversations? Not all of it is around money, but there is elements that are about money, and you've got to put your money where your mouth is. So if you want something, what is the capital investment that you're going to put into this? So that's very important when it comes to that. So in the organizations, we've got a lot of transactional conversations which are around contracts, they're around service level agreements, they're around trading terms, right? And those are all transactional. Those are all about how do we lock a customer in? How do we force ourselves to do business? And what are the rules that govern us to do business? That's the transactional piece. This piece is around being a partner. This piece is about how do I align my strategy to that of the customer. And this is the space you actually really want to be playing in, because this is the place that shifts the conversation to a supplier and a partner. This is the conversation that allows you to get an invite to your customer's strategic weekend getaway. And it's not about you having a free meal and a drinking session. It's about this supplier is important enough to bring to our strategic meeting because we value what they say. And where we're going, we need the supplier to be on board and agree and commit. I mean, that's a big shift from dictatorship to relationship. That's a big shift from just bring your product to I want to see how you bring your product. Does your product care about the environment? And I think if you want to be a customer and you want to be a supplier of choice, then these are the type of things that you actually really have to start looking at. So Dave spoke about a muscle and building muscles. So I think, guys, we've mastered the transactional muscle. We've got legal departments. We know all the contracts. We know all the terms to lock customer in. We know all of that. But I think I implore you today to really start building the muscle of partnership and seeing how you can meet your partners and your suppliers or your customers in the middle so that you can move the conversation forward. So I think the 3 key takeouts and all that I've said, if you forget everything, just remember these 3 things. Firstly, you've got to understand your customer. Make sure you're not the pawn or the cat. Make sure you're the lion and the king in the conversations. The second one is you've got to be intentional about feedback. It is every day, it is constant, it is in everything that you do. You can't just do a survey and think that's feedback. That's a once-off encounter. It just depends on the bad day you found whoever's filling out the survey. It has to be every day. And I think the last and the most important piece, which is about how do you match your capabilities that move you from a supplier to a partner. I'm going to hand over to Nomkhosi, and she's going to tell you about some of our wins so far.
Thank you, Silindile. I know Dave played a very humble card and said we didn't want to be best in class, but the honest truth was we did want to be best in class. So today, I'm just going to take you through our journey. And I think if I share that journey with you, we're going to be more relatable more than anything else. So I'll move on to the next one. Customer collaboration is not something new. It's a legacy function within the FMCG world. But when we started the journey, we thought that we are experts in what we do. We've got Dave, who has done everything you could possibly think of. We had Silindile, who had transport experience. I came from an FMCG world. So we had this long list of ideas and all of these joint value creation proposals and these fancy templates, and we were all in high heels and like, you know what, we've got this. Reality was, we were, as per Ian Bird's conversation yesterday, we were in ICU. Nearing death, because all escalations were going to our CEO at that level. So we had to take a step back just to understand where our customers' pain points, what were the constraints, and what do they really need from us. And when I talk about our customers, we mean retailers, and it's not just 5 guys, it's thousands and thousands of customers. So we had to split them and then find a strategy that will work for us. So that was through a roadmap, because obviously if you've got a plan and a goal, which our goal was to be the preferred supplier of choice. You have to be guided by our roadmap. So it was, what is our customer needing from us at this moment? What data can our customer give us? And we need to be very careful when it comes to data, because some customers can bombard you with data, but the data is not saying anything. What is the right data that we needed from our customer? How is the customer actually measuring our service level? I remember our first commercial meeting, we were sitting with 95 across all portfolio. But when we met some of our customers, I think our service level was at 40%. So I shung, I'm like, okay, what am I celebrating in my organization? So part of this roadmap also was, how do we then become the preferred partner? So we went to our customers, met our customers, we came back with this long shopping list of things that they really required. Yes, there were a few things that are common, some of it being service, on-shelf availability, truck turnaround time, because to be honest, every customer now is struggling. They're looking at every rand and every cent they could possibly get. So it was tough. and we had to go back into the business. And remember, customer collaboration cannot succeed on its own. We had to meet our internal stakeholders, meet our partners, and say, guys, this is what our customers are needing, and we need your support. So we had to create engagements. So these engagements was with our internal stakeholders and external stakeholders, which is our retailers. The conversation was about what's happening in our business. There's nothing embarrassing than a customer telling you about what's happening in your organization and you don't even know about it. So we had to educate ourselves about our business and obviously give feedback to our customers. For example, we always look at innovations, look at our products. But if a product is discontinued and your customer is still ordering it, it basically means that your customer is not in line or in sync with what's happening in your organization. Dave mentioned load shedding. What were our backup plans? Do our customers know that we've got a backup plan? How are we phasing that backup plan? You always have supply constraints. Is your customer aware of those supply constraints? This is not to manipulate demand or anything, but it's just so that your customer is aware of what to expect. Yes, our system and capabilities was not where we wanted it to be, but with the little knowledge that we have, what can we share with our customers? So we had to wear two hats. Internally, we are the customer voice. So yes, the customers give us a beating, but actually internally we represent them. And when we go to our customers as well, we actually understand and even hold them accountable sometimes on the certain things that we need to do with them. So yes, it sounds like we got everything on track, but I think this one example really speaks to what really happened a year ago. So we had this one particular customer that knew our CEO's cell phone number, personal email, and everything was just going directly to him. We got the famous invite. We were actually summoned into his head office because poor service level, poor on-shelf availability. Each and every truck that we were going there, they were basically returning some of that stock before GRV. So we prepared our fancy decks. David and myself flew down to KZN to meet them. I think out of that conversation, the only thing that we said was hi and bye. Everything else was just them telling us how bad we are. So I think it was a very open and honest conversation that we really required. To be honest, I didn't feel like that back then. I actually was thinking about my purpose. What is my real purpose? Maybe I should be a housewife. This is not for me. But in actual reality, I needed that honest feedback for us to find the proper strategy because it was really what the customer really required. So just some context what was happening here. So this particular customer retailer was under the assumption that we have the same shelf life across all our SKUs. So whether they've got edibles or non-edibles, of which we only provide edibles, but they were expecting that whatever product we send to them is going to come with the year shelf life. Now, if you saw the range that Dave put up of our products, we've got products that have 2 months shelf life, 6 months shelf life, 4 months shelf life. We've got 40 manufacturing sites. So there's obviously supply chain within supply chain. So we had a task to educate them, to say, in this category, this is what I can offer you. In this category, this is what I can offer you. Yes, you will get a few products where we can actually give you a year, but we also have seasonality. So we need to be better prepared. For example, we're in winter now. For our legumes, which is our beans and SAM, we had to prepare well in advance so that everyone has enough stock. So it was our responsibility to relay that information back to customer. So that's why we were going there for the purpose of coming back with the full truck again. That's why the on-shelf was sitting on 10%. Truck turnaround time, at that time, I think we were sitting at 2 hours, if not 4 hours, because they will just scan, do you have anything with 2 years? If no, goodbye. It was like that. So we went back again. Trust me, that flight was the longest flight because we didn't know what to expect. We got there and we said to them, this is how our business works. We are fair and equitable. However, we cannot meet your demand. And that was the truth. We shared with them a proposal and said, how about we use an exceptions process where we'll call you and tell you that for this particular order, this is the shelf life that you're going to get. And then we'll link your shelf life to our shelf life requirements, which is 5 months across our products. They were like, oh, okay, and then what does that mean for service levels? Like, okay, if we do this, I guarantee you improved service level, right? Didn't know how that was going to happen, but that's what I said. I committed myself. So I had to put my resignation letter on the side just in case it didn't happen, so I'm well prepared. 3 months down the line, it was the stock fill period. And obviously they were doing the year-end buy-in. Service level was actually sitting at 96%. They actually now called us again. Like, okay, cool. Do I walk in there confident with my 96? Is their 96 matching with their 96? And the conversation was so different. We actually owned the conversation now. They're like, okay, what else can we do? We're now sitting with 96% service level, but our stock on hand is still quite high, and our rate of sale is not actually equivalent to how we're moving our stock. So it was becoming a partnership more than anything else. So finally, we agreed and signed off that proposal. We now have a documented shelf life requirements with them. But you might think that the job is done, but it wasn't. It was actually the beginning of a journey, because this is one customer of thousands of customers. And the one thing that I always say is our retailers have amnesia, and it's proper amnesia, because you can have 7 weeks of good shelf life, 1 week you miss it, you're screwed. They don't know you, you are bad at your job, and you're not. So now what was important for us is to understand, how do we remain sustainable? How do I make sure that my service level of 95 or 96 is actually consistent and stable? And how do I keep the engagements going? So engagement, it's not always the good stuff. Yes, in our business, we're very big on celebrating success with our internal stakeholders, but how do we do it with our customers as well? Turnaround time with this customer is actually sitting below an hour. Why? We've managed to get preferred doors. They know if my truck is there, it needs to come in first. It's not because I'm there all the time, I see them and promise them a truck of Weet-Bix for free, but it's because of the engagement and the consistency of the relationship. So I think key takeouts out of everything that we've mentioned in today's talk is, how do we remain sustainable in our service level, consistent service level, and how do we move from dictatorship to having a conversation with our customers? What's realistic, what is possible, and what's not impossible? And it's okay to say, you know what, I can't meet your needs, but this is what I can do with, and obviously you have to promise them something. And then obviously, how do you move from transactional to relational? So that's our journey. We still have 999 customers to do the same thing too. But yeah, it's been an exciting journey, and I think there's great opportunity and great learnings. And the only way to do it is having the time. If it means flying there and being dictated or getting a beating, do it. The outcome will be worthwhile. So next, I'm going to call Dave just to give us a summary overview. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Nomkhosi. There's a saying, when I took on this job just over a year ago, people said, "Oh, you put on some weight." I said, "No, my skin has just got a bit thicker." That's how it works with customers. You've got to have a thick skin. No, the reality is, actually, you've got to care.
Yeah.
That's the point, actually. You've got to care. And if you care and you're willing to listen and actually engage to really understand what's going on, then a lot of these problems, a lot of the challenges that you're facing can be solved. Because often as suppliers, we'll take a position of, sorry, this is how it works, we know we're right, go and sort your problem out. But when you actually talk to each other, often you find there's some unlock. I mean, Nomkhosi gave one example today, and it's a really important example because it changed both our lives. But without the conversation, we wouldn't have got there. And now we're able to get real alignment. So where are you on your journey, I guess, is the question on this process. And what's next? I mean, with this particular supplier, they're now investing in some very fancy technology. And they're talking to us about piloting it with them and working with them on making it work and understanding it and getting the benefit out of it together. To have that opportunity to work together and to have that mindset of, wow, that's great, that looks like a great system, what do you need from us? Having those type of conversations when you're implementing systems makes a huge difference on both sides. It really does. It just allows you to work a whole lot more seamlessly. It allows you to get closer to the switch, Wesley, on off. Because the relationship is set and the preparation is done to be able to really now optimize those things. So I think that's a really exciting part. When you talk about some of the next steps, is starting to look at some of the longer term things. What are you doing around the environment? What are you doing around your next systems, as we've spoken about? Where are you building capacity? Where are you building your next big DC? Let us know up front. And let us start thinking about what is the impact to us and how we're going to optimize our systems. What opportunities are there in terms of your network, on backhauls, on green doors, on all sorts of ideas? Customers have got great ideas. They've got their own catalog. And by the way, when we talk about catalog, we don't go to a customer and go, there's our catalog, pick something. Okay, that would be kind of dumb. But we know what capability we've got. And then as we're talking to the customer, we go, okay, we can match that to something we've got. Or there's a gap in our capability. Let's put that into our plan to build a muscle on that, or to build and then to make that into something that has got a strong process, so that the next customer who comes along to asks for it, we're able to do it seamlessly. So that hopefully has given you some ideas on what's possible, some of the mindset and thinking around customer collaboration. And we just thank you for the opportunity to be able to share some of this from the Sasco brand. We have a saying, people who care make things better. And that's really, I guess, part of our DNA and our thinking in supply chain. Thank you. Are there any specific questions? Yes. Sipakazi.
Hang on. Just wait a minute.
Thank you. It was a very, very good session. I think it's an important conversation to have in terms of how do we create win-win situations in terms of our customers and supplier relationships. And it isn't just about Pepsi and your customers. It's really about what SAPICS stands for. It's actually the improvement and the betterment of the supply chain in our nation.
Totally.
So it's really fantastic that you guys are doing that, but not only that you're doing that, but that you're sharing that journey with us. I have a question specifically for Nomkhosi, because she said, I wonder if my 96 is your 96 when she arrived at the meeting. And maybe perhaps I have my finance hat professional question on, but what gets measured gets done. So I wanted, if you could share some insights in terms of what key measures or matrices are you tracking that tells you how they feel about you, maybe just 2 or 3 that you look at that's completely aligned to how they feel about how you are servicing them. Thank you.
Yeah. So that's a good question, Sipokazi, and I think that was also very important when we began this journey. So how our business looks at service level is we look at case fill rate, so what you ordered and versus what I sent to you. Now, with the customer, it's a bit different because they've got the on-time in full element, which means, were you able to give me my full order, and did you give it to me within the agreed lead time? So what we were doing in the past is we will get the order, service it in full, but 7 days or 9 days post the required delivery date. So according to the customer, you're basically sitting at 0 because yes, you were there in full, but you're not on time. Right, so it was us now closing that gap to say, what is our lead time? And I think we had a talk yesterday that related to the lead time element. What is our lead time? Is it realistic to our network? And do we need to change anything? So what we've done this year is actually adopted the on-time in full element into our business as well, so that we really now have the same measure with our customers. So instead of us sitting celebrating the 96s, let's look at the 20s and how do we get to the 96 together with the customer.
So if I can build on that, and I think it's a really good question, and thanks for the answer, Nomkhosi, spot on. One of the things that we were hearing, and which I shared right at the beginning, was this concept of promotions. And so not only do we measure that, some of our customers actually give us a view on what was the on-time and full of the promotion itself. And there's a whole different level of expectation around promotion, because shoppers are shopping off broadsheets. They come into the store and they go, I want that product. So there's no point bringing it 2 weeks later when the promotion's over. So that the on-time and full becomes even more important as the promotional element comes in. Shoppers will say, I've traveled all the way to the store to buy this product. It's not here. Here's my taxi fee. I want my money back. Okay, that's the conversation, because people are so tight and those promotions are so critical. So that's a key message that was coming back to us that builds on what Nomkhosi was saying as well. I saw a question at the back there.
Hello.
Ella.
Hi.
Hi, guys. Great conversation, quite passionate about customer service. So my question is for everybody on the stage, and I just wanted to find out, or all your guys' take, is that some might say that customer service is actually reactive. What could we actually do in our business if we wanted to be proactive and to I think you guys spoke about the co-creation of value. So what can we do to be proactive to create value? Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Shall I take it?
Okay.
It's fine. You can go.
Okay, so I think there is not one answer, it's multiple answers, but I think I'll speak to this one specifically. That is collaborative forecasting. Currently, one customer shares their forecast, and their forecast bias is really, really good, which allows us and to procure our raws on time and build stock for them based on that forecast. But if I say one customer, it means that the rest, we don't have that right. So I think us prioritizing that element in our supply chain is quite key. So we're able to get the signals early and we prepare early. So I think that's just one element that I think right now is our key forecast, collaborative forecasting.
I think for me, because we're not all playing in a supply chain environment, we're not all playing in, we could be suppliers of a service or not actually of a product, and therefore demand forecasting might not be particularly in your space. But I think what's the key thing that's in everybody's space is communication. I think there's this fear around, should I tell my customer? What are they going to do? Guys, tell your customer, keep telling them, tell them again, irritate them and tell them, because what that does is that customers then know what's going on in the organization. In the organization, you're all speaking the same language, and it doesn't matter whether they call myself or they call Dave or they call Nomkhosi, we're all saying the same thing. And I think that's the proactive versus the reactive. So keep telling them before they ask you. Even if you think it's not important to them, tell them. So that when it does come important to them, they've already got that information beforehand. And what that also allows them to do is to say, maybe I didn't think of it at this time, but it is going to impact me later. Let us engage and see a workaround around that. So I think for me, the big one was just to over-communicate, if there's such a word.
We still get stuck on that one, by the way. It's tough because you go, should we communicate this potential risk to the customer? Let's look at our forecast. Let's look at our stock levels. No, we got loads of stock. It's all going to be fine. For instance, we've got a shutdown in a beverage factory because it's seasonal. It goes into maintenance for a month. No, it'll all be fine. Week 3 of the shutdown, everyone's biting their fingernails. The forecast is way oversold and stock has expired or whatever the case is. Something's happened in the supply chain, and now we've got to go back to the customer and go, you know what, we had a shutdown. So customers are really asking us to say, let us know these events up front so that we can build those events into our plans. And that's the proactive thing that we need to talk about. Now, you know, what is over-communicating? You know, there's a question mark around that. But if you just look at the recent last 2 years, the events that have happened in terms of floods, riots, you could just list them on 2 sets of hands. That customers want to know. They want to know what's going to happen and when is your expected recovery so that they can build that into their plans. And I think that's where you move from customer service to a bit more of the collaboration approach. Yeah.
Hi guys. I think coming from the retail space and distribution more specifically, we play in the cold storage space at Victor Logistics, and I must say, first and foremost, congratulations to you guys. It is not an easy journey to go from where you were to what you guys presented today, and we ourselves are on that journey as well to become more collaborative. I think the question from my side is, that initial hurdle, having so many incidences prior to getting onto this journey, even if it's for 1%, that is the challenge. And the biggest thing is to eat humble pie. But what were some of the operational challenges you guys faced, going to the customer, coming back, and then putting that down to the business?
I think one of the core, and I'll answer this one, and then you guys can also add on to it. You're absolutely right. So until you've got some basic service level improvement on the board, people are not really that interested in talking to you. It's hot air. It's like, please don't come back and waste my time. As soon as they start to see some effort and some improvement, then the conversation starts to shift a little bit. And of course, as Nomkhosi said, amnesia is a big thing in that sort of particular population group, we find. So, that was a big thing. But then the other thing is to say, okay, how much resource do I put behind all this, because we've got limited resources, and where are we going to see the big benefit? And part of that is, okay, we've got a plan of how we can communicate and engage with each different customer. Is the customer willing and able to engage in the same way and bring the same to the party, so that you can actually have the conversation and take something forward? So that was a big thing. And then starting small and doing some examples and building some trust, it was absolutely key as well. So with some customers, we got one particular category working and showing some benefit. And they okay, let's expand this now from just the snacks category to groceries as well. And okay, we understand that model, that's how it works, let's get it going. So that's sort of how we approached it, is building trust, getting something working. And then, what could have been, a session that took 2 hours, once you've started to get some momentum and you've got the program in place, you can get down to a 15 meeting. Very quick session. This is where we are, guys. We want to update you on these things. What are the next steps on our joint program? And you can start to get some momentum that way. I don't know if that answers or okay.
I think for me, it's also around the educating of your customer. So we've played in so many spaces, and we've got so many factories, and a customer doesn't understand why is it a 7-day lead time. The 7-day lead time because the factory is in Atlantis and you are in Bloemfontein. That is why it's a 7-day lead time. So customers, for example, our Simba factory is in Isando, and we've got one in KZN. So if it's a 48-hour lead time, that's because you're right next door to our factory. So I think when you go on the journey, you actually got to be honest about your capabilities as well. And then it just sets the scene of what they can expect from you. And then the conversations just become a lot easier. So I think just re-educate and educate some more. I think that will actually help you on the journey in terms of getting your must-win battles that you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I think the last one is understanding the role your full SPL team plays. So you can have your stock, but if your transporters are crappy, it doesn't serve the purpose. So is your transport team, your planning team, your order management, your call center in line with what you're trying to achieve? Because it's not only us. Yes, we can speak, we can share everything, but if all those elements are not working in sync, then we won't achieve our goal. So it's actually having all those key stakeholders in the same meeting with you, so that if they ask you, why was your truck 2 hours late, you say, Mr. Transporter, can you just take accountability for 1 minute? So it's that in syncness in our business before we actually go out to customers, so that we have one voice.
Right, can we call it there? We're on time.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Ncube. Thank you, SAPICS, for a fantastic presentation. Thank you for your time. Can I ask you to give them a big hand?